Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. This time I've got a full tank review for you on the T-54 first prototype. This is the Tier 8 Soviet medium premium tank, and it is a fantastic entry if you want to make some credits quickly in World of Tanks. The T-54 first prototype lacks none of the armor that you would expect from a T-54 prototype. 120mm at the front makes this thing so durable, and you combine this with 180mm of turret armor and you have got the most heavily armored tier 8 medium tank at your disposal. If that sounds like your thing, then hang around. I've got multiple ace tanker gameplay coming right up for you. And if you have no interest in this tier 8 Soviet premium medium tank, then I'll let you know how to deal with them effectively on the battlefield. Now, the T-54 first prototype you're only really going to buy for one of two reasons. Either A, you want to make a load of credits, or two, you want to accelerate some crew training. And the vehicle does these very well indeed. The vehicle makes a huge amount of average experience per battle, and you can use that to either convert off and then accelerate some of your other tank progress, or check that accelerated crew training button, and maybe you want to make your T-60A crew or your Object 140 crew completely badass. The T-54 first prototype doesn't actually cost as much as you might think. It's 8,750 gold. That is 3,000 gold cheaper than its Tier 8 heavy counterpart, the IS-6. As well as being 3,000 gold cheaper than the terrible T-34-3. It baffles me why anyone would pick this vehicle over the T-54 first prototype. However, on the other hand, the AMX CDC is cheaper by nearly 1,500 gold than the T-54 first prototype, and that makes that a very big competition if you're an advanced player. But I digress. If you want to know more about the AMX CDC, you should go and check out my full tank review on that vehicle. To assist in analyzing the features of the T-54 first prototype, I'm going to compare it to the T-44 equipped with the 100mm gun, and also the AMX CDC, which I feel is your next best option if you're looking for a Tier 8 premium medium tank. So the T-54 first prototype has the same hit points as the T-44, but it is slower, 44 kilometers an hour versus the 51 of the T-44. It is also fractionally slower backwards by 2 kilometers, and it weighs 1.5 tons more than the T-44. And that's unsurprising considering that its frontal armor is 120mm, the same as the T-54 at Tier 9, but remember, we're at Tier 8 now. We're going to be able to fight Tier 6 tanks rather than the Tier 7 minimum tanks that the regular T-54 can. And so that makes the 120mm of armor of the T-54 first prototype even more special. And combine this with some excellent side armor of 90mm, and you can angle the front of your tank really quite leniently. It should be noted that the side armor of the regular T-54 at Tier 9 is actually 80mm thick, meaning that the T-54 first prototype is more heavily armored, at least with regards to the hull, than its bigger brother at Tier 9. And the good news doesn't end when it comes to the turret. One of the most frustrating things is if you've got good hull armor but a really weak turret, a lot like the T-44. The T-54 first prototype has 180mm of frontal turret armor with also a healthy 120 at the side. But just try to avoid getting shot in the back as you have 75mm of rear armor, which is worse than the T-44's. And this, unfortunately, is where the good news ends. For the vehicle, its engine power is worse by 160 horsepower than the T-44, meaning that its horsepower to weight ratio is a quarter less than the T-44's. It has slightly worse traverse speed, but 42 degrees a second is still very healthy, and it allows you to keep your very thickly armored, angled frontal armor to your opponents when they try to get around you. The terrain resistances on this tank are also excellent, so much better than the CDC, but then again, the CDC does have that 35 horsepower per ton ratio, so if it didn't have these terrain resistances, it would get around like a light tank. One of the disappointing aspects of the tank for me is the view range. 360 meters is very low for a medium tank, and that means that even with coated optics, and if you choose to use combat rations, a premium consumable, you are not going to be able to get up to that magic 440 5 meters view range. The guns between the tanks are very comparable, the same alpha damage, the same penetration, pretty much the same shell velocities, and the same damage per minute because the rate of fire is the same. However, the T-54 first prototype is slightly less accurate. 0.38 means that you do struggle to pinpoint your opponents at mid to long ranges. And what's even worse is the vehicle has got 2.6 seconds aim time, which means that you often have to aim your shots for a lot longer than you would want to or expect from a medium vehicle. Furthermore, the gun depression and elevation of the tank is worse than the T-44. It has 6 degrees of gun depression. That is the same as the Object 140 for all of you Soviet Tier 10 medium tank drivers out there. And its limited elevation angle of 17 degrees means that you should really try to avoid either reversing up the side of a slope or letting your enemies get above you. Also, I'd like to highlight the fact that this tank gets a terrible ammo capacity of 34 rounds. That means that if you penetrate every single shot for the average roll of 250, you are going to be damage capped at 8,500. And when you go back and consider that this tank is rather inaccurate with a very long aim time, and it gets 175 millimeters of penetration with its standard rounds, which is rather low considering this tank can meet tier 10 vehicles, you're never going to be able to get really effectively above 5k even if you're very accurate with your marksmanship. So it seems like this fantastic armor on this vehicle has come at quite a high cost. Let's just test to see how good this armor is at sort of a mid to short range like this. Considering the vehicle has an excellent side armor of 90mm, you can exaggerate the angling of your vehicle when you're tanking your opponents. From this position here, if an opponent wanted to try and get through your front plate, he would need to have 220mm of penetration. And your lower plate, he'd still have to have 190. And even though the side armor does look like a tempting prospect, if he wants to try and track you at the same time, he's going to have to get through 250 to 300mm of armor. And if they hit the side part of your tank going through the tracks, it's going to be a ricochet to 300mm of penetration. They'll have to hit this tiny lip above that and still have to get through 200mm at the front and have a ricochet at the back. And if they want to try and jam your turret, they're going to have to get through anywhere between 180 directly on the mantlet in some areas to 220, with some very thin cupolas up here. But if they can manage to get a shot into that, you really are being too stationary. So what this really means that if you are engaging a tier 6 or a tier 7 tank and he doesn't fire premium ammunition at you, he is not going to be able to get through your armor, even if he is a tier 7 tank destroyer. This is also the case for every other tier 8 medium unless they fire APCR. They are not going to be getting through your armor if you angle effectively. To get through the armor more than half the time, you'll have to be getting shot by tier 8 heavy tanks with good penetration guns like maybe the IS-3, and you're still going to be absorbing half the damage from tanks such as the E-75. And so that's quite enough of that. Let's take a look to see how this tank performs in some gameplay. And so here we go, we are playing on Live Oaks. This matchup is fairly nice for the vehicle. Yeah, we are the top tier tank, but half of the enemy team are tier 8, and these kind of vehicles, especially the T-34, the IS-3, the 5100, the Jagd Tiger, are all challengers to the armor. And you really do need to think like that in the T-54 first prototype. You need to think about vehicles you can engage without taking damage, and vehicles that you have to be more afraid of, and that you're being chancy when they do take shots at you. So we've been quite aggressive here. We have a T-44 alongside us. Ironically, look at that. Look at the similarities between the vehicles. You have to have a keen eye to notice them. I feel like I want to advance. We've got a huge amount of tanks behind us, including an Su-152. And there is one of the tanks that I would be slightly worried about. Here's the 5100. I advance at him, making sure that my armor is always angled, and when I see he's not paying me attention, and I can focus in some shots. Looks like we've caught him in a pretty awkward situation, and we put 3 shots into him fairly quickly there, racking up 744 damage. Ironically, or coincidentally probably, the first 2 shots I fired were exactly average damage in this tank. Now just take a look at the gun performance here. We talked about the 2.6 second aim time and the 6 degrees of gun depression. 6 degrees of gun depression is more than enough to poke over this ridgeline and engage the Panther. And you have to do so slowly. Unfortunately, the 175 millimeters of penetration was unable to get through that Tier 7 French tank destroyer. Hopefully we can penetrate our second shell. Yes, we can. Great stuff there. So I feel very confident in my armor here. There's no artillery. Just wish my gun was behaving a little better. Can't afford to waste these shells in this vehicle. But as there's no artillery, in this kind of a position, I'm really not worried about the Panther penetrating me reliably. He does have 200 millimeters of penetration, just like the AMX AC-46. But really at these kind of ranges, they need more than that for me to be afraid. Even if they hit me, I'd say that I'm still probably 2/3 to 3/4 favorite to bounce the damage. I want to push the tempo, so I advance forwards. I'm not really worried about those Tier 7 tanks. But unfortunately, our aim time and our accuracy mean that we don't hit the hull of the IS-3. You'll notice that the gun on this tank really doesn't behave like most medium tank guns. This is with a full skill crew, also using a premium consumable, and I've got very good crew skills on this tank. The Panther tried to flank me. I avoid the ram, and he goes off on his travels, doing a tiny little bit of damage to that Tier 7 tank destroyer, but basically just feeding us a big load of tasty health. Now we bounced a shot from the IS-3 there, I believe. He shot off my side of my turret. And I bounced off that AMX AC-1946 again. Now I'm going to load some premium ammunition to try and compete with the IS-3. These premium rounds have got 235 millimeters of penetration. And they make getting through angled armor like that on the side of the Jagdtiger just that little bit easier. It's unusual to have done 2,700 damage in this tank, and the pressure really is on. I cannot afford to bounce any more shots. My team are wilting away, a Super Pershing on no health, and a Cheeto isn't going to hold back. An IS-3, a Tiger, and a T-34. I have to get forwards and kill this 1946. Oh my word, I cannot believe that hit the ridgeline. But that's what happens with the mediocre accuracy and aim time on this vehicle. Now the 6 degrees of gun depression is very frustrating here. I don't want to miss these shots. So the first shell goes into our tank. We rush forwards, reload faster, finish off that Tier 7 French tank destroyer. But unfortunately all my friends have fallen too. I flank round, put one shot into the Tiger. 243 damage. He's got 229. Please don't low roll. Please don't low roll. Please don't low roll. Oh, disaster. I reload an HE shell because I don't want to waste my ammunition. After this, I've only got 6 shells left. I start reloading the APCR round. The IS-3 jams me in the side. He rushes forwards. I track him and get alongside him. This is something you can do in your T-44. Luckily, I can go below him and he won't have the gun depression to shoot me here. The T-44 behind me misses. Well, the IS-3 misses the shell behind me, but unfortunately, we couldn't quite get to the side of the IS-3 and we get taken out there. This replay highlights the T-54 first prototype in a nutshell. Its armor is great as long as you're not getting shot by tanks with 225 millimeters of penetration and 246, I believe, around about 250 millimeters of penetration. When that starts to happen, your armor becomes very ineffective indeed in close quarters combat, and you better be hoping that they're engaging you at a long range where you're hopefully got some kind of awesome angle on your armor where you're able to bounce them. We also got to see what the aim time and the accuracy are like on the T-54 first prototype. We found it very hard to kill our opponent quick enough and as effectively enough to be able to get through this situation alive. I think if I'd had some enhanced gun performance like on the T-44, I might have been able to deal with them faster. But then again, I wouldn't have had the armor to ricochet so many shots from the Panther in the 1946 from here, and have that confidence in my tank to push forwards and start to harass the IS-3. Honestly, if those two Tier 7 tanks had appeared here, rather than trying to flank around me, I would have just angled my armor and calmly reversed up and taken probably no damage from them. Luckily for me, I had two excellent players on my team left over, and they go and they take the win. Let's just take a very quick look at the post-game stats to see how much money we made in the T-54 first prototype. So this win was my first mastery badge in this vehicle, 4,431 for our double, and 126,900 credits made. Now let's take away the premium ammunition that we fired in that game, because we were under a hell of a lot of pressure, and it's not normal for this tank to have to do 4,500 damage in a game. And we still ended up with 70k profit. A very tidy amount for the 6-minute life that we had. While our armor was holding up, we managed to bounce over 1,000 damage from the enemy team, making our potential damage received 2,425 before our destruction. Accuracy-wise, we did hit 29 out of the 30 that we fired, penetrating at just over 70% of our shots, and that's why I do like to keep a good stock of premium rounds in this tank. You do need that 230mm to contest a lot of vehicles, and when you're making this many credits, you can nearly afford to only fire APCR, but you'd have to be a fool to do so, because against the majority of targets, that 175mm is sufficient. Either way, let's get stuck into some more gameplay. This time I'm playing on Runeberg. We are in another tasty matchup in this tank, and because I've spawned in the north, that means I can easily get to this location first. The team that spawns north can get here faster and more safely because of the lip out here. That means that we get to catch tasty tanks like this T-71 ill-prepared. We put one shot into him on the move. Hopefully we're going to finish him off. Hummel says no. What a shot there by artillery from our base right through the town to deny us that kill on the Tier 7 American light tank. Now I don't want to hang around here for too long because that T-32 locking down the town from the west. I spotted Type 58. Type 58 is a very tasty tank, and because of the armor in this vehicle, I don't mind playing aggressively. If I was to do this in an AMX CDC, as an example, I might get shot in the side by a VK302. The Type 58 might put 300 damage into me before I take him out. Well, that AT-8, as an example, could turn around and engage me. But because I've got that 120mm of armor, I play aggressively in this tank. And that's fantastic when you want to make a lot of credits rather quickly. The Hummel takes another kill from me, that cheeky bugger, finishing off the Type 58 before we're able to get our shell in. We bounce the 88 once, put our shot into his weak point up the top. Now we have a Sturra Mill in the side. And we finish him off, supporting our good buddy Ike, who's playing in the Indenpanzer. Put a good hit into him first. We're unable to get any more shots off though by the looks of it. Maybe we'll get the VK as he comes around the corner. Yes, we will. One into his side. And the T-34-3 on our team finishes him off. Now I realize there's another tank destroyer in the corner just now. And we take a chance to secure the kill. And we get lucky and our shell goes right at the target. Now we have an Indenpanzer. I try and use the third person to shoot through the wall at him, but he pulls back. Now an Indenpanzer is an interesting vehicle to try and deal with in this tank. His frontal armor is enough to at least try and contest the penetration on your gun. But it really is the excellent performance of the 88mm on that Indenpanzer that does give you a lot of trouble. With its standard rounds, it's got 200mm of penetration. And as you're going to find, just because you've got 120mm of armor at your front and it's well angled, that doesn't mean that it's always going to be effective. The M44 misses us. Hopefully we can reload in time. Yeah! Unfortunately, that means that the Panzer manages to penetrate his first shot. Look at that, right through the frontal plate of this tank. I come round the corner, and he penetrates us yet again, just shooting down onto our upper plate like that. And look at the angle. Another one right through our frontal plate. He's penetrated us 4 times now. 5 times right through the frontal plate. So I'm going to have to do something different. What's happening here? Let me explain to you why he's able to get these shots so effectively through our hull armor. Because the Panzer is taller than us, and it's a tank that surprisingly has pretty good gun depression for a German vehicle, he's able to aim down on our upper plate, and that makes it less effective. Armor is more effective when it's angled, and if someone was to aim from here and shoot at the upper plate, that would almost be a guaranteed ricochet. From here, you would shoot into the lower plate because it's angled in such a way that it will make it flatter for you from this position. Because the Panzer is above me, shooting down on my upper plate, it is literally just 120 meters thick rather than being 120 millimeters, plus the angling making it about 200 to 225 effective, making it very easy for him to penetrate 4 shots in a row, irrelevant of the angle. So let me show you another secret weapon in the Soviet tanker's arsenal, and that is the Soviet side hug. If you manage to get alongside the guy, you're going to put a lot of pressure on him. As you can see, he missed over the side of our tank there. And furthermore, if he does manage to hit you in the turret, you're still going to have that 180 millimeters effective frontal turret armor. And so use your low profile advantage and give them a good old-fashioned side hug. And you're still going to come through your engagements on top. So from here on in, it really is just a clean-up. We bounce a shell from the Super Pershing. He penetrates his second shot though. Our team finish him off. And I'm just trying to chase down a little bit more damage. Remember that the T-54 first prototype isn't the fastest of tanks. Hopefully we can penetrate this Jagdtiger's lower plate. Yes, we can. 6 kills, 3,300 damage. Makes for an excellent game in this tank. And that means that we're going to get quite a reward. So this time we picked up the high caliber and the Top Gun medal. We got 117,500 credits profit and 4,825 experience for our double. And because we didn't have to fire nearly as many premium rounds this game, that is a 92,000 credit profit in a 5-minute game. Our armor was effective enough to brush aside the T-71, the 88, and the Type 58 at the beginning of the game. But as soon as we had to deal with the Panzer, it certainly became a lot more tricky for us. So definitely take this into account if you're thinking of purchasing one of these tanks, or if you're using one in close quarters combat. Anyway, let's get stuck into our final piece of gameplay in the T-54 first prototype. So this time the matchup is not nearly as nice for us. There are tier 10 tanks on the enemy team, a huge amount of tier 9s as well. We're going to have to be very careful. This time we're not going to be brush-asiding those tier 6s and those tier 7s. We're going to have to deal with some high penetration guns and some opponents with some good frontal armor at least. So what am I going to do here? Well, I got a really good spawn, and I feel like I'm insignificant enough in this matchup to make an aggressive play to try and have a huge impact in this game for my team. And so I'm rushing to my favorite location, D4. I bounced the first shot from an unknown opponent. Maybe it was that 110? Can't know for certain. I want to get to the D4 area, so I'm going to be able to spot for my team and also hopefully deal with their light tanks and any medium tanks that go down here. This WZ-131 has got it in for me. I'm very surprised. Statistically, he's the strongest player on the enemy team. He is out of his mind for deciding to come and fight a T-54 first prototype. He manages to get his first 2 shells in, but now I've got my frontal armor to him, he is just getting dominated. The T-30 on my team manages to finish him off, but even if the T-30 hadn't, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have been able to do any more damage to us. And a tier 7 light tank is just as valuable as a tier 8 medium tank, especially so in this matchup. We put a good hit into the AMX 1390, and now snipe one across into the back of the AMX 5100. Note how long the aim time is in this tank. Took us quite a while to get into position to be able to get that 5100. Just to set the scene as well, I am doing my 4th tier incinerator mission. That means I have to set 2 vehicles on fire that are 1 tier higher than me in the same game. And so imagine how excited I was when this first shot went in. As soon as I penetrated this first shot, I was just begging for it. Please, please, please. I let the fire go out before I shoot him again, but we failed to set him on fire with the second shot. Nevertheless, not bad result there. 963 damage for 2 shots into that tier 9 tank destroyer, the French tank destroyer. Now we've got a tier 8 British medium tank shooting at us. We put 1 shot into the Centurion. He misses his shot. Unfortunately, my poor accuracy and aim time mean that we hit the ridge line, but our ally Amaraks him, blowing his head clean off. Good shot there by the Object 261. Our turret armor holds up well, and we bounce a shot from the E50. I go backwards and forwards, worried about the 2 artillery on the enemy team, but luckily, one of the artilleries is now spotted and isn't engaging us. I go back up, feel like my armor's fairly strong here. The only thing I'm worried about is getting shot in the side by the Foch, and I want to start contesting these tanks. I put a good shot there into the side of the E50. Every shot I'm praying for a fire right now on one of these tier 9 tanks. The incinerator mission is a very, very tricky one to get done, and so I am only firing APCR ammunition here because I just wanted to get this mission complete so much. Hopefully you guys are seeing just how important this position can be. We finish off the tier 8 German premium medium tank on the enemy team, the Panther 88. We have picked up 3,000 damage from here. Make that 3,185. And we've done an undisclosed amount of spotting damage that we'll find out at the end of the game. An ISU 152 manages to jam me in the side of my tank, and I don't have very many hit points left. Luckily, we finish off the M103, and our Object 261 appears to be on fire as he takes out the Tier 8 Soviet tank destroyer, the ISU 152. Oh, come on, baby. Shots into the side of a Jagdtiger. Where's the engine? Where's the engine? Oh, the shot goes low and hits him in the track. I wanted to hit him. Hopefully where the Jagdtiger's engine is. Oh gosh, artillery engine, artillery engine. What are we going to go for? Go for the engine. Oh no, he's on too low health. But we take out a Tier 9 tank destroyer there. Finish off the Tier 10 artillery. And I think at the end of this game, I was just disappointed that I didn't get my incinerator mission done. Q, Q, Q. Nevertheless, my sadness was certainly short-lived when I caught a glimpse of the post-game stats. 5,621 experience for our double, 165,000 credits, the Patrol Duty Medal, and the Confederate Medal. We certainly were the assist tank for this game. That's a whopping 1,785 base experience points. In this round, we did nearly double what anyone else on our team was able to do in this Tier 10 round, and we did 5,000 spotting, highlighting just why I love that D4 location on Karelia. This game was just under 5 minutes, and yet, even though we fired all of those APCR rounds trying to chase that second fire to complete that incinerator mission, we still made 111,000 credits profit in less than 5 minutes. While my Object 140 crew certainly enjoyed making 5,621 experience towards their crew skills. And so these are really the reason why you would play the T-54 first prototype. And so games like these have enabled me to get some pretty darn respectable stats in the T-54 first prototype, even though I've only played 24 games in it. And so what I feel is that the T-54 first prototype is probably one of the best premium tanks that you can purchase if you're a beginner to a medium strength player. Especially if you want to get into the excellent Soviet medium tanks. This thing really is a pleasure to drive if you have a T-54 or an Object 140, and if you don't have a regular T-54 at tier 9, then you owe it to yourself to get one of those machines. It's probably one of the best tanks tier for tier in the game. And so it's unsurprising that when you kind of take the armor characteristics of this T-54, put it down to tier 8, and enable it to make an absolute metric load of credits and experience, you've got a great product. And I think it's baffling that this tank costs less than 9,000 gold, when machines such as the T-34-3 and the 112 are 11,000 and 12,250 gold. I personally would consider the T-54 first prototype to be a bit like a modern Type 59. The only thing that this tank really doesn't have that the Type 59 had is that preferential matchmaking. When you do get into one of those tier 10 matchups, you have to play very carefully indeed. And you're not really going to be brawling with those lower tier tanks. You're going to have to be a supporting role for your other tier 10s. And if you're purely playing these kind of tanks to make credits like a lot of players are, then that is going to slow down your grind. All in all, I thoroughly approve of this tank. I would recommend this as the first premium vehicle for anyone in the game, as an excellent moneymaker and brawler, and it's only if you're a medium to advanced player that I would recommend instead getting the AMX CDC. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this tank review. If you did, please consider give this video a like down below. It really helps the channel out. But if you're looking to make some credits and the T-54 first prototype isn't quite your thing, and maybe you're a medium to advanced player of medium tanks, then simply click up here and you can go through to find out everything about the Tier 8 French premium medium tank, the AMX CDC. And let me know in the comments down below what is your favorite Tier 8 premium medium tank and why. Maybe you like the Japanese STA2. Maybe you love the Panther 88. There might be a few of you out there. It could even be some T-34-3 lovers out there. Or maybe you're just a troll and you're going to say the Type 59 just to make everyone who hasn't got one bitter. But anyway, as always guys, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic and hopefully I'll see you soon.